Hey folks, welcome back to Critical Pain. I am Critical and this is going to be painful. Today we are going to be looking at and reviewing the Kershaw Crown. This is a knife that was discontinued. You can still kind of find it maybe on eBay. I think I saw it on Amazon as well. A little expensive on Amazon, right there at the MSRP of $20, which is what the MSRP of Kershaw is. I think I found it on eBay for around $12 or $13. I'm not too worried about getting a fake one because they're generally unknown of. I've seen a couple of reviews on there. Some of the most, I actually saw it on Birdshot IV as well. Bird and Frank, we were unboxing some viewer knives and they had one of these in there. They just kind of picked it up and, oh yeah, this is it, and moved it off to the side and was never heard of again. I don't know what happened to it, but yeah. The only other person I saw did a really good review on it, kind of review I agree with, would be the guy who's got those fancy nuts. He did a really great review on this and I agree with it. So let's go ahead and take a look at her real quick. She's got a really nice nostalgic gentleman's look with a modern day feel to her. It's got a really nice neutral handle design, and if you look here you can see it's got some handle swells in it. We'll talk about that after a little while. Stainless steel bolsters. It's got black, or it's also available in blue, like a royal blue micarta, and it has a drop point style blade. It is manual opening with thumb studs. This is not a spring assisted knife like most Kershaws are. It does not feature the speed safe in it at all, and it is right hand tip up carry only, and it is got 8 CR13 MOB for the blade steel. Size comparisons, we got the iconic 6. First up is the Gerber paraframe, CRKT's M16, probably the most comparable knife to this, the Ontario Rat number 2, and you can see this knife is just slightly bigger than that. She might be just a little fatter where the swells are as well, where the micarta swells in the back here. Very comparable knife, both thumb stud liner lock opening knives, the crown being just a little bit bigger than your Ontario Rat number 2. Your Kershaw Leek, that is a spring assisted knife. Your Spyderco Delica, and last but not least the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. So as you can see, this is a little bit bigger than a normal pocket knife. The blade's coming in a little over 3 inches, but she's pretty much right in that range, kind of bordering on a little bit big to carry, but she fits in the pocket really well. So let's go ahead and take a look at her. She's got a beautiful blade design, drop point blade, got some swedges along the back side here, hollow ground, really thin behind the edge, not really thin behind the edge, but pretty thin behind the edge. Makes for a pretty good slicer. She's got minimal tattooing on her. As you can see, it does have Kershaw labeled right there in the grind of the blade, but it is kind of just minimal. And then if you flip it around to the back side, you can see this is the Kershaw 3160, the Kershaw Crown, and it also has the China label in there, which I'm alright with. I mean, country of origin really doesn't matter as long as I get a quality product. I'm pretty happy. So the thumb studs on this knife, I really like that. As we can see, these are properly positioned well behind the plunge line here, so it's not going to be in the way of the cutting path. I do have one of these. I have got a couple of these knives actually. This one here is the one that I've been carrying around for a few years, and I took that apart just so we can see what's going on the inside there. And as you can see, I'm going to bring the pivot up here. It does have a D-shaped pivot, so this can be taken apart, but the handle is, which is alright. I'm fine with that. It makes for a really nice strong design. These are all pinned together, so you can't take this apart at all, but you can take this apart like it was an integral knife and still get up in there and clean all this out. It is a flow-through design, as you can see right there. So you can, it's big enough I can get a cotton swab up in there and get all that cleaned out real good and all the gunk and whatever in and out of there. And the fit and finish on this particular knife, especially at this price point, is actually quite decent. I do have a little bit of a problem with where the micarta meets the bolster on the underside of it. You can kind of see that it pulls away a little bit right there, but I mean, it's not really that big of a deal. Same thing with this side right here, but everything is nice and flush. It's got a really nice feel to it and rounded over. The fit and finish on this knife is actually really good. The only other problem I have with it right here is these are just a tad bit sharp, but not overly so. But that spine is a little bit sharp on that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Well, we'll discuss it again a little bit later. Deployment, this thing is wickedly smooth. It is an extremely stiff knife when you first get it, but after it breaks in, it is just, it's very, very smooth opening. The detent is definitely a little bit weaker than the Ontario Rat number 2 here, but it opens probably a little bit smoother than the Ontario Rat number 2. It is just great, and closing is the same. It won't just fall shut, but I can shake it shut, which is incredible for a knife at this price point. And especially seeing that it's running off of 1 phosphorus bronze and 1 Teflon washer, which usually gives you a little bit of a sticky action. I find that I feel this has a little bit more of a sticky action, the Ontario Rat Model 2 here, than my Kershaw Crown does. I like the fact that it doesn't require a lot of force to get the detent up onto the, there's a nice little detent ramp there. It doesn't require a lot of force right there to get the detent ball up onto that ramp. There is no blade play in this knife. It locks up nice and safe and reliable, and it is a solid knife. It just feels good in the hand. Like it feels like I could do some damage with that. I like the fact that the handle is nice and neutral. It should feel good and almost, it even feels good in this position, to tell you the truth. It's not probably the best, but it feels good in that position as well. In that reverse position, it feels good in the pinch grip. It's got just a really nice handle to it. The cutout here is well designed. It makes for easy access to the thumb stud and the lock, for righties anyway. As I continue to carry and hold on to this knife, it seems to be a really nice and well thought out knife. Moving on, I like the fact that how this thing carries. There is nothing on the clip right here. There's no marketing or anything like that. It carries it's a shallow carry clip, as we can see right here. If I put it into my Daisy Dukes and get her up in there, it's a pretty shallow carry, but I mean it doesn't look bad at all. Like it carries fairly nicely, and as you can see, I can still get my hand in here, and I can get to my other items. Like it feels like it was designed to live in my pocket, and I'm glad that the makers of this knife kind of kept that in mind as they were making it. So we'll go ahead and get my Daisy Dukes out of the way there. So let's continue on, and let's talk about a few things that I don't like about this knife, or her weaknesses. First off, I guess the blade steel ACR 13 MOV, but again, I mean, for light duty everyday carry tasks, cutting open boxes, stuff like that, this is going to retain its edge long enough for me to get home into my strap at the end of the night if I have a really busy and heavy cutting day. If it's a pretty normal week like I have, then I can probably go all week and it's going to hold its edge retention all week for light duty EDC tasks, cutting open the occasional box or cutting up a piece of fruit for the kids or something like that, with no problem at all. And I can visit the strop once on Sunday night and be done with it, and it'll be good to go for the rest of the week. So I'm alright with ACR 13 MOV, but for some people they're not going to be alright with that. But at this price point, it's totally acceptable, I feel. But some people are going to see that as a bad. This sharpening choil right here is probably one of my biggest, oh my god, and it's so close to being done properly, but it's just not. It just barely clears the plunge line, and not even. Like, the plunge line is, yeah. And I mean, I don't care what price point the knife is. It's knife basics. If you're a knife builder, I feel like, and you're going to put a sharpening choil on there, at least do it correctly. And if you're not going to do it correctly, have a nice decent plunge line where I can sharpen my knife. It's not that hard, but I mean, oh my God, every knife maker in the world does it. It's like society's like, we don't care about the basics. We don't care about that. I mean, it's just like 0 fucks are given. I mean, that's just, it's not acceptable at any price point, and it's just terrible. Just terrible. And I'm gonna have to go in there and finish that up. I paid money for this knife, and as you pay more and more money, and you still see it, like even this Benchmade right here, as you can see, like, it gets a little fat right there. This choil should have came out just a little bit more, and this isn't a $10 knife at all. I mean, I paid a lot of money for that. That's an $80 knife right there. It's not a little $10 knife, and I mean, it's not a lot of money as compared to some of the knives I could have bought, but when we're getting into that price range, that is totally unacceptable. That's totally a deal breaker. At this price range, okay, I'm gonna not say that it's acceptable, but at this price range, I will accept it and go and finish it off myself. But it's not acceptable at any price range. Absolutely not. It's knife 101. Knife should not cut you when it's closed, or a folding knife should not cut you when it's closed. And a property sharpening choil should be put on there. I mean, it's just, it should lock up solid and safe and reliable. These are all things I expect in a knife at any price point. And if they don't offer that, then there's something wrong. And this is one of those as well. This sharpening choil, like, it can't be like that. It just can't. We've got to move past this. We really do. I know I'm making a big deal about it and I need to move on, but oh my God. So, sharpening choil. Spine around the thumb studs are a little bit sharp, which I'm alright with on a outdoors knife. On my pocket knife, not so much. I'd like to see that chamfered up just a little bit more, but it's not overly sharp like Spyderco Delica here, which, I mean, I could just shred up some wood with that right there and make some kindling. I mean, I've got outdoor knives that aren't as sharp as the spine on this Spyderco Delica. Like, it is ridiculously sharp. So, I mean, this is sharp, but not in compared to some other knives out there. There is another big flaw with this knife that we'll talk about a little bit more later. But this is, I'm going to pull the blade from the one I took apart. This is the older one. This one actually does have just a little bit of lock rock in it, and that has developed over time because it didn't have it when I first bought it. This one has none whatsoever. This one has just a tiny bit in it, and that's because where the tang right here meets the stop pin, let me get this in the frame, where the tang right here meets the stop pin is totally flat. And so after time, as I'm sitting here and flicking this sucker open like I do, and it's banging into the stop pin, it's actually distressing that metal a little bit. And I mean, I guess all of them will do that, even if it would wrap around the stop pin a little bit. But if it would wrap around the stop pin a little bit, it just gives it more contact area with that stop pin, and so it won't wear that metal down quite as fast. So, I mean, you can extend that by just rolling it out with your thumb and not, banging it out there, like flicking it out there like that, and that'll greatly probably extend the life of this knife. Let's see, we're going on, and with washers, we talked about a little bit of that. I don't like the fact that, I mean, even at this price point, that we're using 2 different style washers in it. Let's just choose one and go with that. I think I would have paid, you could have made the MSRP $25 and put a brass washer in there, and I'd have been happy with that. But you didn't, and it's kind of something that I don't like about this knife. There is a little bit of tolerance play. The pin, just like in this one as well, the pin just doesn't seat, or the pivot, it's got just a little bit of tolerance. You can see right there, just a little bit of tolerance play. And I mean, it's not that terribly bad. It's not something I like to see in any knife, really, but It's not affecting the action or the safety of this knife, so, but again, it's kind of on the bad side. Blade centering on these are iffy. This one here looks to be a little bit off towards the presentation side, and this one here is actually perfect, the one that's taken apart. With regards to the action, this, if I can get it to do it, there it goes. It can be shaken open. I don't feel like it's that big of a deal with a thumb stud knife. That was quite a bit of force I had to do to shake it open, and I mean, I can do it with this one as well. Benchmades are notorious for it, first shake. So I mean, it does have that. Some people will gripe on that. To me, it's not that big of a deal, but worth mentioning. It does. We'd mentioned that hot spots from the clip. The clip, I think, is aesthetically designed, and most of the things on this knife were really well thought out as far as design goes. But this clip I find is a little bit thin, and it kind of makes for some hot spots as you're holding it in your hand, right in here and right there, with the pinch grip right here, with the backwards grip. I can feel it digging in right here on my finger. As a matter of fact, you can see it right there. I don't know. I feel like this clip was designed more for the aesthetics of the knife than the comfort of the knife, and I was kind of disappointed with that. It doesn't take away a lot from the ergonomics of this knife, but it is definitely worth mentioning that this clip is a source of a lot of hot spots on this knife. Alright, and that's pretty much it for the strengths and the weaknesses of this knife. Oh, one more thing I want to mention. Another weakness, not really towards me, because I carry my knife right hand tip up only anyway, or I like to carry my knives right hand tip up anyway, but this is a right hand tip up only carry knife, so therefore lefties and people that like to carry tip down, they're going to be out of luck. This clip cannot be positioned any other way. Alright, so what strengths do I love? At this $10 to $20 price tag, and the quality of this knife is mind-blowing. This is an absolutely wonderful knife for the price point, and the quality just blows me away that Kershaw has made something like this, and the fact that, like I said, I've seen this very rarely throughout the knife community and on YouTube and like that. It's almost like wow, because the quality is mind-blowing, especially that I got this first one over here that I took apart at Walmart for about $10. I think I paid like $9.95 plus tax for it. The one right here in front of you, and I got a couple more on eBay for about 12 bucks. That's definitely something that I absolutely love about her. It's great. The beautiful blade design, good gradual drop point. I love that about this knife. The fact that it's hollow ground and it's got a relatively thin slicing edge. I like that. I like the fact that the blade is fairly sterile and has minimal tattoos on her. She's got the thumb studs and they're properly positioned and they're tight. I like that as well. The deep shaped pivot, which makes maintenance on this thing fairly easy. And the integral design, I like that as well. It makes taking this knife and putting it back together fairly straightforward and simple to do for the most part. After the break-in, her deployment is fantastic. That you can find in action on this knife that's running on phosphor bronze, and a Teflon washer is just amazing. It's just amazing. It's fantastic. The action on this knife is fantastic. And even though this knife is bigger than I normally like to carry because of the rounded handle design, it really does fit well into the pocket, and it allows me access to the rest of the gear in my pocket, which is a really big selling point on the knife for me. And I like the fact that the designer kept in mind that she's going to have to live in my pocket for long periods of time, and that she's not always going to be pulled out, and I'm going to be going in there to get other things, and I really like that I did that. Alright, are there any deal breakers or anything that I mentioned about her weaknesses that I'm just not going to be able to handle, and she's not going to be able to ride in my pocket. No, not really. Even if I paid $25 for this knife, it would be awfully hard to describe any of her weaknesses as deal breakers. If it was into the $30–40 range, the fact that the tang doesn't wrap around the pin and the action is running on bronze and Teflon washers and that sharpening choil is not positioned properly would definitely be deal breakers, and she probably would not get a lot of pocket time at all. But the fact that I can fix this and I can buy another $10 knife and put another bronze washer in there, and I can just be a little more careful, or I can just accept that in about a decade or so it's going to establish a little bit of lock rock, I am fine with all of those for giving up $10 of my hard-earned money for sure. $10 to $15 of my hard-earned money for sure. So let's go ahead and talk about the final conclusion. For $10, she's definitely a keeper. She has a nice retro look with a modern feel. After her break-in period, she deploys beautiful and reliably. The tolerances are decent, even though she is running on a mix of phosphor bronze and Teflon washers. Her detent is a bit on the weak side, and with enough force she can be shaken open. However, I feel it's not that big of a deal. It kind of should be on the weak side. It's not a flipper knife. I'm not going to accidentally open it. It takes some manual manipulation of this knife to actually get it to open, and the force required to shake it open just isn't, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not too worried about it. I like that she has a beautiful neutral handle and it's balanced well. I like that the clip has a decent, I like that even with the clip on it, it has decent enough ergos to do most EDC tasks comfortably. And even though those hot spots on the clip will give you a bit of grief if used for extended period of time, it's still alright with me. She is a bit bigger knife than I normally carry, but due to her slim and rounded handle design, she doesn't take up that much more real estate than my smaller knives. The tang of the knife does not wrap around the stop pin, and therefore it has gotten a little bit of rock lock like we mentioned earlier in my oldest one. It may eventually wear out to the point of being unusable. At this point, I don't feel like safety is that big of a concern, or my knife is unusable. So at this point, it's I still have a relationship even with my older one. I haven't even put this one in my pocket yet. And though it really bothers me that I have to finish up her sharpening choil again, I mean, whatever. We need to move past this as a society where we just are like, whatever, I don't care so much about that the sharpening choil is not positioned right, and the guy that's sharpening it, or if I'm the guy that's sharpening it, has to deal with that. We got to move past that. I paid money so I wouldn't have to deal with that. It's like me going and having a painter come in and painting my house and I have to clean up after him. It's just not, I'm not going to pay that. I'm not going to pay for that kind of service, and I don't expect to pay for that kind of product either. Anyway, I'm moving on. I know I've griped about that 2 or 3 times in this video, but it really bothers me. But over the years, honestly, I've found her to be a great knife. I absolutely love her, and I absolutely have a relationship with her, and she still gets carried time in my pocket. If I need a nice Sunday knife, church knife, or something like that, she's definitely going to go in with my pocket. Sometimes I just bring her just because I like her. Just is what it is. How do you feel about the Kershaw Crown? Would you like to start a relationship with her, or have you started one with her? And if you have started a relationship with her, how is she treating you? Well, folks, until next time, I hope you all have an absolutely great day. And that's been a look at the Kershaw Crown on Critical Pain.